I couldn't wait. I was like, I'm only going to watch this show on the weekends. On the weekends. But no, we are getting our Dr. Pepper on as per usual with Steins Gate. And I couldn't wait. I could not. I physically have waited like 3 days and I was like, no, I got to watch it. So we're on episode 3. I did go back and I watched the dub of episode 2, and I want to talk about it with you all before we dive into this episode because there are things to talk about. So I will say this, because I created a Discord channel over on my Patreon for Steins Gate. So if you want to join my Patreon and go talk about Steins Gate, please spoiler tag, black box that shit, because I don't want to get spoiled. But in there, people were talking about the dub, and they were like, are you going to watch the sub or dub? And I was like, I want to do the sub. And I know the dub is amazing. I'm having the best time with the dub. But there are 2 main reasons why I am doing the sub. One is because the streaming service I'm using doesn't have the dub for Steins Gate. I think it does for Steins Gate 0, which is going to be way down the road, I know, but it does not for the original series, so that's a problem. The other thing is, past episode 3, I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch the dub. I'm going to talk to Discord about it and see if there's other places where it's located, because it's not on Crunchyroll. But anyway, some other things the other reason why I'm definitely sticking with the sub is after watching episode 2, there is some language changes in the dub versus the sub that, while not pertinent, I do believe changes some of the meaning, and some of it is lost in the localization when it's translated. And I'm like, oh. So I want to talk about that with you before we start episode 3. Episode 2 in the dub, some of the dialogue in the initial exchange between Okarin and Kurisu is changed and localized, kind of like the Deke dub of Sailor Moon. And I just feel it loses some of the original seriousness or context, but that's just my opinion. It's still really good. The scene with Okarin outside with Daru in the aftermath from the lecture with Kurose, I still wonder why Daru was out there to begin with, because the heat always gets to him so far, or at least he's been complaining about the heat throughout this series so far, and so I wonder why he was out there with Okarin to begin with, but maybe Okarin stormed out and Daru went to follow him because he's a real one and wants to take care of him, so who knows. But this line from Kurose is... This line and then the whole exchange about Ruka are my favorites of episode 2 in the English dub. Anyway, Kurose says, and when it cuts back to her and she's finishing up the lecture and kind of schooling Okarin, she says, safe to say, string theory doesn't jive with the notion of bouncing around through time in a blue police box. However charming that sounds. Any arguments from you, sir? And by big blue police box, she's talking about Doctor Who. So I like that they made the Doctor Who joke with her getting in there. But the thing with that is, even though the Doctor Who joke is really funny in the dub, she doesn't, the whole point of the Japanese sub and that exchange and why it was getting on his nerve and why it was so funny was because she kept poking at his name that he told her. He's like, I'm Hoen Kiyoma, and he says it all big and boastful. And the part that was funny and so engaging in that back and forth between them was she kept saying, well, did this prove your theory wrong? Hyoen-sama, does this prove your theory wrong? Hyoen-san, Hyoen-san. She keeps pushing his name back in his face. And in the English dub, she doesn't say his name, which, you know, was teasing him. And that was kind of the point of that exchange. So that's kind of lost in translation, which at the end of the episode, when she says, oh, you mean Okabe Rentaru, and she points out his actual name, some of that's lost in translation in the English dub. And after watching this second episode, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm sticking with the Japanese sub, but I'm still going to watch the dub if I can before I start the new episodes. But I'm glad I'm doing the Japanese sub for the reactions, is basically what episode 2 has shown me. Also at the shrine, they changed the line so that you don't get that the joke is when Okarin's like, oh, hurry, my hand's getting possessed. In the Japanese sub, Mayuri says, oh, last time we were here, it was your other hand. And that's the joke. The English dub, for whatever reason, they don't say that. So you don't get that joke and it's lost. Again, just some nuance, lost in translation. I'm glad I'm doing the sub. But I do love this exchange where Okarin is talking about, I'm going to try to say it with the same inflection that Okarin has, because that's what's funny about it. He was like, Orishibara Ruka, delicate as an orchard, fair as a cherry blossom, the personification of feminine grace, and a dude. Tall as a willow, slender as a reed, a dude. Radiant in shrine festaments, dude. The sun dips low in a rosy sky, cicadas buzz. Ruka is a dude. So again, the thing about Radiant and Shrine Festaments, comparing the Japanese sub with the English dub, the Radiant and Shrine Festaments does not give the impression of gender. So in the English dub, that scene would lead you to believe that Ruka is just a man who comes across as feminine and who Okarin originally misgendered. However, the Japanese sub, when they say that Ruka's wearing a priestess outfit, that leads me to believe more that the possibility is that Ruka's a trans woman. So I don't know which is which. And the English dub and the Japanese sub lead you to two different conclusions. So I guess we'll find out if we see Ruka more in this series, and we'll just have to go from there and see what the conversation is. John Titor, which in the English dub said Titor. John Titor has a different voice actor than Okarin, so they're clearly different people, so we think. I had theorized last episode that maybe it was like that John Titor was Okarin from a different timeline, but they have entirely different voice actors. Like the voice actor for John Titor was like Mustangs from Full Metal Alchemist's English dub. So I don't know. That theory's out for now. They do talk about parallel theories and world lines. So after rewatching episode 2, my theory is, does Steins Gate, whatever Steins Gate is, does it let you travel between those world lines? And did Okarin travel to a different world line himself when he hit the phone number for the text back in episode 1? This John Titor says in the current timeline or the current world line that he never went to the year 2000. But at the beginning of episode 1, Okarin told the professor in the time travel discussion that the theory he was using was John Titor's from 2000. So maybe that was a Titor from a different world line. We don't know. And so then we do notice in the English dub that Daru is into the pink-haired girl at the Cat Maid Cafe. He's into her and he's mad because she like flirts with Okarin and Okarin is indifferent. And then Moika, the shy girl that was looking for the computer that's tied to John Titor that we found out last episode, I wondered after rewatching the dub if maybe there's a different version of her that texted Okarin in this timeline or this world line. If maybe there's a Moika of this world line and a Moika from another world line, and the Moika from the other world line that's really bouncy and happy and like has lots of exclamation points texted him from that world line. I don't know. When Okarin texted her back, he said the password, the El Psi Congru. So, and then immediately we had a flashback of Okarin looking at these mutant bananas in what looked like a science lab. So I'm like, are we experiencing, is the El Psi Congru like a way for him to keep track, or is it a way for him to access Steins Gate and open up Steins Gate and travel between worldviews or world lines? I don't know. I'm so curious. So yeah, that's where we're at. So I've stocked up on Dr. Pepper tonight. When we last left off, Kurisu had showed up, and she was calling him by his actual name, and it's like, okay, what we gonna do now? So I guess we're gonna find out. But anyway, thank you all so much for your kind words and for your support and for commenting. I'm super excited to see where this show goes. But in any case, we are not going to waste any more time. We are going to start Steins Gate episode 3, rule of 3, right? We'll see. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And I'll see you all on the other side. I feel like we're ahead of the game, and that's a great feeling. It's kind of unnerving. I'm like, should I feel this confident in myself? Am I having an Okarin moment of confidence? It's gonna be sorely misguided and misplaced. Wow, okay. So this episode made me feel great. I was like, okay, maybe we're onto something. Maybe things are slowly kind of starting to go in a direction, but then there's so much mystery, and I'm like, but but what about that character? And why are they doing these things? And where is that leading? So this episode was great. We need to talk about this episode because there's a lot going on. So Kurisu or Christina, I see why we have that going on. She shows up and she's like, well, I did knock, but apparently Daru gave them their address. She's like, I did knock. And he's like, how did you find this place? And she's like, well, I asked Daru or Hashida-san for it. And that's when he's like, he called it a laboratory. And she's like, I was expecting something more than this. And he's like, Daru, did you betray me? You were fooled by her feminine wiles. I can't read Okarin. I can't read him. There's parts of me that are like, okay, he's being serious. Then there's parts of me that are like, his brain is fried from going through different world lines. Then there's part of me that's like, is he just insane? And then there's part of me that's like, is it all in his brain? Like, I can't read him. And that's great. But oh my God, Miyano Mamoru, worth it just for this episode for him to be like doing the little pervert voice. I was like, oh my God, Miyano Mamoru is crazy in the best way. I'm just sure of it, but like a good crazy, like a nice crazy, not a serial killer crazy, but like a weird, eccentric, but fun crazy. That's the good crazy. That's the kind that you want. And his voice acting was absolutely insane in this episode. I loved it. He's like, I'll never forgive you. And he calls Kurisu a bitch just because he's mad because she schooled him at that lecture. And she's like, hi, you started all this, sir. How dare you call me a bitch when you're the one who sexually harassed me in public? She's like, can you do anything about him? And like Daru's like, I think he's just confused by events. Just events. So there's questions I have about his character. So we're going to put questions up here. We have things we're going to talk about this episode. So questions are, I'm going to put Okarin on the phone to no one. I don't know if it's like a defense mechanism or if his brain's fried from doing it in a previous timeline or what it is. But he's like, the organization finally sent an agent to the lab. Also, the organization. I don't know if this is going to make CERN like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I also looked up some stuff on the Large Hadron Collider, the LHC. We're going to talk about it. Also, side note, CERN in the series might be a fictional rendition of the actual CERN who does exist, right? And this came out in 2011, so we're going to talk about this because there is some significance to that when we get to the Collider and talking about it. Fun times. But yeah, so what about the organization? They've sent an agent to the lab. But how things change when the agent offers assistance, right? And so she's like, what is Steins Gate? And Daru says that it's something Okarin made up. So Steins Gate, we still don't know exactly what it is. What's funny is that Steins Gate, as an English teacher, the title of this series makes me visibly uncomfortable. Because instead of it being, you have an apostrophe. Here's a mini lesson from Professor Black, where you have an apostrophe. This apostrophe is signifying possession, meaning that it's Steins Gate. It is the gate of Stein. The gate belongs to Stein. And I was thinking, when we talk about Stein, because I actually have a family name because I have a lot of German in me, Stein is actually in a name that I have. Stein means stone, right? Means stone or rock. So means a stone. Stein means stone or a rock gate. Right? Which, could mean like an archway, could be passing through. Are we going through the veil? What are we doing? But that's literally what it means in German. Stein means stone. So then you have a stone gate, but it's not Stone's Gate or Steins Gate with the apostrophe like it's possession. Instead, the title is Steins or Stones. There's no apostrophe. And then there's a damn semicolon and then gate. Which a semicolon, if you're not familiar with what that is a grammatical device that takes the place of a conjunction and, but, or, etc. And basically just combines sentences together without the conjunction. It's a stylistic tool. I use them all the time. They're great if you don't want to keep putting and, but, or in the sentence. You can make a whole big old sentence with lots of semicolons. Fun times. But basically this is saying Steins, stones and gate, or rocks and gate. What that means? Who knows? But just some semantics going into this. But apparently it's something that Okarin made up. She's like, sure. He's mixing up his German and his English. Okay. So then Okarin gets on to Kurisei because she didn't take her shoes off. And she's like, oh, sorry. I've been in America too long. We had this discussion on Discord. I'm going to put up some interesting connections here. So connections. We found out that Kurisei, aka Christina, as she's called, has been to America and is going back next month, which is August in this series. Okay. Which we had this discussion on Discord because people are asking, like, do you take your shoes off when you're at someone's house? It's in America, it is a mixed bag of whether you take your shoes off. It's the weirdest thing. In my house, oh, my shoes come off at the door. Shoes off at the door, take them off, walk around, whatever. But it's weird. When I'm at other people's houses, I kind of gauge, I always gauge what the owner of the house is doing when I walk in. So like if the owner's walking around with shoes on, I'm like, should I wear my shoes? And sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends. It also depends on, it's weird. If there's like an intimate setting and you're just over at a friend's house, they have their shoes off, everybody else does, and you're just like watching a TV show together and it's like this intimate little gathering, yeah, I'll take my shoes off. But if it's like a party where there's a lot of people gathered and people are walking around like the living room and kitchen, then people usually keep their shoes on. The shoe etiquette is just, it's mind-boggling, right? I know in Japan, everybody takes their shoes off. It's like, no, you take your shoes off. And it also depends on like, there's a class system with it because like I'm from a farm family. So of course I take my shoes off inside our house because usually if you're from a farm, your shoes have like poop and mud and dirt on them. So you don't want to track that through your house. But if it's like a posh person's house, sometimes you leave your shoes on because like you don't want your socks. It's the weirdest thing. Now, in a hotel, oh, the shoes are staying on until I get on that damn bed because no. But it's the weirdest thing. It's so bizarre. And so I could go on a tangent about shoe culture in America. But anyway, she's like, I've been in America too long. I also like the little calendar that says New Pond that they have on the wall there and the little fish like mail thing. That's really cute. But yeah, so she's like, nice to meet you. And she offers to shake his hand. Kurisei is trying to be nice. And he's like, yeah, he doesn't want to do it. She's like, Japanese men don't know how to do anything. But he doesn't want to shake her hand because he's like, I can feel murderous intent from your every pore. And she's like, really? And then she just goes up to Banana. She's like, I came here to see if your claim that I was stabbed was real or just an excuse for sexual harassment. But this is more important with the Banana. I'm glad this girl is like, she's checking into it, which I don't know how to read Christina, aka Kurisei, very well either, because I mean, she seems rather curious about this whole stabbing thing, which I can understand. If someone's claimed you were stabbed, I'd want to be kind of curious too, so we'll see. But anyway, we'll skip the OP for now. So this episode's called, there's two different titles. One says Parallel World Paranoia, which is on the actual episode, but then the title in Crunchyroll says Parallel Process Paranoia. So world and process, I feel like that's a big difference. So Parallel World Paranoia. That seems like the actual title of the episode, so we're going to go with it. Parallel World Paranoia. Which I am convinced that there are world lines. I'm convinced there's multiple world timelines and they're all intersecting and something's going on. So this picture of the satellite, I want to go back and look real quick at episode 1 and make sure I'm not seeing things, because I feel as if, is the satellite different when it crashed this time around? I want to see if it was different this time around. I want to see. Where is the part where he looks at the satellite and sees it from above. Okay, so it is the same. For a second I thought that maybe there was more to the satellite, but it does look like the same. Okay, so we get the one girl who works in the shop, part-timer. Amane has been watching the news and seeing all the stuff about the satellite. So Amane, we're going to put her over here. Amane is into the satellite and the Titor conversations. Interesting. I find it kind of coincidental and interesting that Amane and Moika are both kind of involved in John Titor and just happen to have come into contact with Okarin. Does that seem kind of weird and coincidental? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. The fact that Amane is into the John Titor thing and Moika is trying to find the IBM 5100 computer that is tied to Titor as well. The fact that both of these women are like into the same thing that's connected to all this is a little bit weird. It's a little bit weird. It's a bit coincidental. I don't know. Small world after all. But anyway, so then they changed the channel. Was there anything to that commercial it changed from whenever she changed the channel there from the satellite? Okay, so there was Kato. What does that say there? I want to go back. I feel like that was important. I feel like damn Okarin trying to make sure that everything has a place into it. I thought the transition was done so well. So Kato Star Australia. Maybe that doesn't mean anything. And then it says headway, and there's a thing with USA on it. And then we're back to, I love that transition of changing the channel and then going back to Kurisei. So a question here with changing the channel, is changing the channel akin to like a world line where we're crisscrossing between timelines? Who knows? But yeah. So Kurisei, who is a woman of science, is like, there's no damage to the connecting area. And they're like, oh, she's going to set something explosive. I'm like, I don't think she's going to set an explosive. And she's like, do you have any tweezers? And he's like, no. And she's like, never mind. I'll just use my finger if you're going to do that. And she says it's mushy. I like that he calls her a zombie because in the English dub, he also calls her a zombie, which is a nice little continuation there. He's like, I'll give you a banana if you ask. The moment she said, who'd eat a pervert's banana anyway? The moment she said that, I'm like, Daru's going to ask her to repeat it. And the reveal that both Daru and Okarin are both kind of perverted and trying to get her to say it. And like Daru's like, could you say it with like a upset expression? I'm like, oh my God. And she's just like, unlike Mayuri, she immediately knows what they're asking. She's like, are you freaking for real? I love it. And they're like, why are you blushing? Do you imagine something? And then Miyano Maru is unleashed, and this man is able to just go wild. I can't wait to hear J. Michael Tatum say this, because he was just like, say it, genius girl. Girl genius, go ahead. Let's hear what the genius thought. And she's like, you both are perverts. And she's like, it's not a compliment. And then Okarin says, well, I would say the person with the perverted imagination is the pervert. They're all perverts, essentially. Their minds are all in the gutter. Let's just say that they're all in the gutter. I love it. I think it's hilarious. And she's like, we're at the point where she's like, I could sue you for sexual harassment, but I'll forget it for now. And he's like, well, let me tell you the details. This banana has something to do with that microwave, doesn't it? And I love that he's like, oh, it's top secret. But then he says what its name is and reveals what it's used for and says it's his secret weapon. And she's like, what? And so Okarin goes from thinking she's with the organization and is a spy and is a murderous intent out of every pore suspect to saying she could help us figure out how to work this thing. Maybe we should let her in the fold. Like what? So they let her in as lab member 004. I'm curious if every damn person, if Ruka, Amane, Moika, girl at the cat cafe, if they're all going to become 00 members of this lab team at some point in time, if that's going to become a thing, right? this is Future Gadget's lab. And they're like, Christina, you said. And she's like, no, I'll tell you the powers of the microwave if you become a lab member and if you join our team and if you drop the sexual harassment charges. Oh my God. So she establishes she's returning to America in August. So what has she got to lose? He's like, forget about any sexual harassment I've done. She's like, really? And then Daru's like, you know, that's really petty, but I'm kind of proud of you for it. I love it. And he's like, I think our conditions are very favorable to you. She's like, you're making my brain put out too much noradrenaline. What is noradrenaline? I want to know what that is. Noradrenaline is an adrenal gland and nerve chemical that is a neurotransmitter and a hormone. Oh, it's used to raise blood pressure. Oh, she's like, you're making my blood pressure rise just by talking. That makes sense. And I love that he calls her Christina, and she's like, there's no Tina. And he's like, sorry, the zombie. Now, I would imagine when I hear this in the English dub, it's going to lose some translation because he calls her Christina, and she's like, no Tina. And he makes fun of her and calls her whatever the Japanese word for zombie is. And she's like, well, say it right, Hoenn pervert Kyoma. So I'm sure that is going to get lost in translation. And he's like, pervert girl genius. And the perverts are glaring at each other. And he's like, shut up, pervert. Okay, fine. He's like, I'll stop calling you one. You are now lab member 004, Christina. Which, if you don't know, Christina is the name of the possessed Stephen King car in that. So I'm like, is this going to be like a Revolutionary Girl Lieutenant moment with like people turning into cars? Anyway, not going to spoil any more with that. So then Mayuri comes back and she's just happy that we have another member. That there's a girl joining the team. She's just excited that there's a girl. She's so happy. And I love we have this like could be Yuri moment between these blushing ladies. I mean, look, if we reveal that Okarin and Christina are our bisexual power couple, I'm fine with this. I'm fine with this, right? So yeah, I love that they get to meet. Man, Mayuri is pretty short if she's shorter than Christina. So Daru's like, some kind of lightning came from the microwave. And she's like, when? He's like, when the satellite crashed and you all ran out, I connected my phone to the microwave, which was around the time that he sent the message. So the microwave was hooked to the phone, right? Meanwhile, here we had this lovely stick figure of Okarin. He sent the text message, and when he sent the text message, it caused this reaction that sent the message a week prior. Basically making it a time machine. Now, not a perfect time machine. It was just sending information back in time. So, but here's the thing. Within that message was information about the stabbing, right? We established later on with Titor's little thing on there that this thing here goes to, let's say, to world line B. The text message was sent back in time a week ago into world timeline B. But in doing so, it cancels out timeline A. Because now, inside Okarin's phone, there's no text message. So the stabbing no longer has occurred. So that detail is gone. Now, Okarin can somehow remember this detail when Titor said that memories could be altered or erased, but he's been questioning his memory, wondering which is correct or not. Is this Okarin the Okarin from World Line A that is now in World Line B? And if that's the case, where is Okarin from World Line B? Or it may not be the case at all. Again, I'm just shooting out random theories. I could be wrong. But that's really weird that stuff from one timeline Okarin can remember and is still in some ways entrenched in this alternate timeline, and the other timeline's been forgotten. So what do we do with that? Again, we still need to figure that out. But he's like, that was yesterday, but it was sent back in the past. What was the microwave doing when you were doing this? And he's like, oh, well, it was reverse spinning. So it was going in reverse when it sent the message back in time. Now, when it was moving forward, that's what happened with the gel banana. So maybe information can be sent by putting it in reverse, but maybe if you do it forward, it affects physical matter. We don't know. So they try to recreate it with this basket of chicken, and it literally causes... Christina's a pervert. I like they tried to put that in, but Ashita ended up doing it. I like when Kurisei like tells Daru and gives him the thumbs up, being like, "Good job calling Okarin a pervert." It was super cute. But yeah, so they said everything's ready now, and then Mayuri messes it up by opening the microwave too soon, and she's like, "Oh, I bet it's ready now." I'm like, "Is Mayuri okay?" Mayuri does a couple things in this episode that I'm like, is this girl just not paying attention? Is there something not on the same level as the other people in the room? Because when she comes in, she counts like the people and realizes there's an extra person there and is like, oh, a guest. Like, as if that wasn't obvious when you walked in and saw an extra person. She had to count first. And then they clearly are talking about what they're doing with the phone and hooking it all up. I can follow what's going on. But Mayuri's just like, oh, the chicken's done. I'm like, girl, have you not heard or paid attention to what they've been talking about? So I don't know if Mayuri is... I don't know if she's clearly a real person. I was questioning if she was an android in episode 1. She's clearly a real person, but I'm like... Is she slightly neurodivergent and just doesn't pick up on the conversation that they're having and just doesn't pick up on the cues and is just like, oh yeah, this is done? Is she on a spectrum? I don't know. But I'm like, girl, why would you open that up when they were talking about not doing it? But her opening it up in the process causes it to like zap out of control and basically put a hole in the floor. Now, kudos for Okarin saving her. That was great. Like, good job, Okarin. You saved her life. Nice going. But yeah, it crashes the whole system. And she's like, EM waves would not have split a desk so quickly. Meanwhile, Mayuri's just mad because the chicken is fried. And Mr. Braun's going to get really mad. But then he looks at his phone and the text is sent back 4 days. It went back to the past. And then they're like, yeah, this microwave is a time machine. The banana split off from the bunch returned to it. The phone microwave is a time machine. Which Christina freaks out about and she leaves. So, which oddly enough, I don't blame her. She's probably like, also, we don't know who Kurisei is associated with. Does she work with CERN? Has she been in the US and traveling abroad to other countries? Is she freaked out because this could legit be a time machine and that might be something the government might be interested in? She wants to stay away from it? Who knows? Meanwhile, Amane is showing that she can fix up bicycles. She's a mechanic, which shows she's got some ability and some skill there at fixing things. Then, meanwhile, we get this Quentin Tarantino shot of Okarin's feet that Tarantino would have zoomed in on. And he's like, I've had 13 messages from the lightning. Okay, so meanwhile, I find Amane is a mechanic. She likes working on bikes and such. Okay. Then we have the stuff with Moeka. Moeka, meanwhile, I'll put here, she has sent 13 messages. And it's now the 30th. So the latest one was sent on the 30th, like within like 20 minutes of each other, right? So now it's July 30th when these are being sent. But this message was sent back to July 24th. Okay. So who knows? Now, did that Okarin text message back to July 24th go to a different timeline? I don't know. So he's calling her Shining Finger, is what he's dubbed her. I'm like, is he calling her Shining Finger like The Shining, where it's like, I don't want to go there, Mrs. Torrance? Is he calling her Shining Finger because she has the shine? I don't know. But yeah, he's like, why this many? And then he goes through them and he's like, message me now. Are you asleep? How long are you going to sleep? These messages are a lot different from the Moika who sent the messages like in last episode. So again, are these different time zones? Are these different world lines, I mean? Who knows? So meanwhile, Daru is trying to figure out the damage. He's like, I worked all night, but I have nothing to show for it. Why isn't anything turning into Jill Nanas anymore? He's like, well, that was the only time we were able to send a message. He's like, should we call Miss Makise back? And then she pieced out after the time machine. He's like, no, she probably won't come back. So then we talk about the Large Hadron Collider. So it's CERN's particle accelerator. And so according to Titor, CERN has a monopoly on time machines. Okay. According to an exclusive monopoly on time machines, allegedly, according to the channel threads. And he's like, John Titor. And then, here's the thing. He's like, oh, the one you were talking about. He's like, A channel can't get enough of the guy. How is it that the day before, literally the day before, he was trying to find information about Titor and there were no results, and now everybody's talking about him again? Is Okarin affecting the timeline and altering things when he shouldn't be? He says Titor is saying that they finished the time machine by 2034. So according to Titor, by 2034, there's a time machine, which in this world is 20, how many years? They're in 2010, so 24 years in the future. Allegedly. Now, he says they finished the time machine by 2034, and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he's like, just tell me, what is CERN? And he's like, calm down. He's like, it's an acronym for the European Organization in Nuclear Research and Particle Physics, which is very similar to what it actually is. I looked it up. The Large Hadron Collider, LHC, is the world's largest and highest energy particle accelerator built by the European Organization for Nuclear Research, or CERN, between 1998 and 2008. So by the time this was being written, it was being created in real time by a very similarly acronymed organization. It says HQ is just outside Geneva, and the actual CERN has their Hadron Collider beneath the France-Switzerland border near Geneva. So yeah, it's pretty much about the same thing. It has some of the world's best facilities for it. Okay, the low energy anti-proton ring, the largest electron positron collider, and the world's biggest particle accelerator. There were rumors that HLC could generate a mini black hole, but these are just rumors. But again, Titor talked about time travel and how black holes could be involved. So real quick, just so we can establish, I looked up the Large Hadron Collider. It was built between 1998 and 2008. So it took 10 years to build, in collaboration with over 10,000 scientists, hundreds of universities and laboratories across more than 100 countries. It lies in a tunnel 17 miles in circumference and as deep as 574 feet beneath the France and Switzerland border beneath Geneva. So the first collisions were achieved in 2010 at an energy of 3.5 tera electron volts per beam, 4 times the previous world record. The discovery of the Higgs boson at the LHC was announced in 2012, which is after this series had aired. Between 2013 and 2015, the LHC was shut down and upgraded. After those upgrades, it reached 6.5 TeV per beam. And at the end of 2018, it was shut down for maintenance and further upgrades and reopened 3 years later, probably because of COVID, at that point, in April 2022. It has 4 crossing points where accelerated particles collide. 9 detectors, each designed to detect different phenomena, are positioned around the crossing points. The LHC primarily collides proton beams, but can accelerate beams of heavy ions such as lead-lead collisions and proton-lead collisions. The LHC's goal is to allow physicists to test the predictions of different theories of particle physics, including measuring of properties of the Higgs boson, searching for the large family of new particles predicted by the supersymmetric theories, and studying the other unresolved questions in particle physics, aka things Romania does not have the academic prowess to know about full on. But yeah, so crazy. So it's still in operation right now, which is wild. And so as far as there's been tests done since 2008 and the inaugural test, the first run was up until 2013. There was a shutdown for 2 years. The second run was 2015, 2018. And then this third operational run is what it's on since 2022. This round is expected to continue until 2026. In addition to higher in energy, the LHC is expected to reach a higher luminosity, which is expected to increase even further with the upgrade to the HL LHC after run 3. Sure. Okay. Cool. We're getting closer to time travel, maybe. Who knows, right? Who knows? I was like, okay, cool. It reached its first stable beam apparently in 2024. Okay. So that's fun. As far as like recent discoveries for it, a lot of the discoveries made were after this series came out, or at least the first series. So we'll see. But a lot of the stuff they talk about in the runs, I don't understand what it does. So, but future plans are a high luminosity upgrade. After years of running, any particle physics experiment typically begins to suffer from diminishing returns. As the key results reachable by the device begin to be completed, later years of operation discover proportionately less than earlier years. A common response is to upgrade the device involved, typically in collision energy, luminosity, or improved detectors. In addition to a possible increase to 14 TeV collision energy, a luminosity upgrade of the LHC called High Luminosity Large Hadron Collider, or that's the HL part of it, started in June 2018 that will boost the accelerator's potential for new discoveries in physics starting in 2027. The upgrade aims to increase the luminosity of the machine by a factor of 10, providing a better chance to see rare processes and improving statistically marginal measurements. The proposed future circular collider, CERN has several preliminary designs for a future circular collider, which would be the most powerful particle accelerator ever built, with different types of collider ranging in cost from 10.2 billion to like over 21 billion euros. It would use the LHC ring as a pre-accelerator, similar to how the LHC uses the smaller superproton synchrotron. It is CERN's opening bid in a priority setting process called the European Strategy for Particle Physics Update, and will affect the field's future well into the second half of the century. As of 2023, no fixed plan exists and it is unknown if the construction will be funded. You know, when I think of circular collider, a time machine. It can be done by 2034, surely. But anyway, that's all wild. I love that they're having this conversation in a restaurant loud enough where these two guys eating ramen next to them could hear everything, but who knows? And then they talk about Titor, didn't one proposed time travel method involve using a mini black hole? And he's like, yes. But you heard Miss Makise's lecture, right? She said that was impossible. He's like, well, CERN publicly denied it. But then we find out later that CERN has the go-ahead, so they're lying. Crazy talk. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And then he says L psi congru. So I don't know why at random points he says L psi congru. I don't know if that's like, I get lots of Sherlock Holmes vibes from Okarin at times. And when he does the L psi congru, it makes me think of that. Because I'm like, why say that when there's not been like a pattern? Like he had Ruka say it. He said it at the cafe where they were talking about the IBM machine. He said it when they're talking about the black hole theory. He said it when they were about to go in to check on the lecture on time machines. So anytime they're about to talk about something, the thing is, anytime that he's about to talk about something involving time travel, he said the password. But then why have Ruka say it back when they were at the shrine? It's a little inconsistent. And then he's like, well, we're going to hack into CERN. I'm like, isn't that illegal? Isn't that going to get you in trouble, sir? He's like, whether we make the phone microwave into a real time machine or let it rest forever in the lab storeroom is up to your skills. And he's like, well, don't blame me for the outcome. Yeah. And then I love that Okarin dine and dashes. He dine and dashes and leaves the bill to Daru, and he's like, son of a bitch. Daru puts up with it. Daru could leave, but he does not. They're all insane. And so then he sees Amane, and she's like, well, the shop's boring. And she lets on that she's been listening to them. To be fair, he does have a giant sign on his mailbox that says Future Gadget Lab, so that's on him. But she's been listening, and he's like, we're hacking into an organization. She's like, oh, is CERN it? And she's like, I overheard you all. And she's like, I'm bored, but don't worry. I'm good at keeping my mouth shut. Is she, though? And so, oh! So this is again. Now, Amane says, what is that? A message that someone died. And he's like, someone died? And she's like, oh, I was just kidding. At the end of this episode, we find out that according to CERN and them hacking, someone had died. So, is Amane from the future? Is Amane from the future? Is she the organization agent that's spying? Because she just happens to run in to the shop to get a job. She knows about them working and trying to hack CERN. They found out at the end of this episode that a human died, which sounds like something that Okarin would text himself in the past. She guessed the text, or she guessed the contents that we find out at the end of this episode. That seems like such a coincidence. So what are CRT TVs? CRT TVs. What is that? What is that? A cathode ray tube. CRT is a vacuum tube containing one or more electro guns, which emit electron beams that are manipulated to display images on a phosphorescent screen. So it's telephone tubes. A CRT in a TV is known as the picture tube. It's also been used as a memory device, in which case the screen is not intended to be visible to an observer. Oh, bitch! Oh, we're getting into this! Ah! Okay. In CRT TVs and computer monitors, the entire front area of the tube is scanned repeatedly and systematically in a fixed pattern called a raster. In color devices, an image is produced, blah, 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 blah. Discoveries. Oh! The earliest version of CRT was known as the Braun tube. The guy that runs and is the guy that is the landlord's name is Braun. What, bitch? Is that coincidence, or is that just I don't know if that's the mangaka doing a clever play on words, that it's tied to her working for Braun, or if there's a connection there. Oh, bitch. Oh. So the memory device that is connected to Kurase and her research. What? The Braun tube. Okay. This is getting crazy. All right. If this is connected to that damn IBM computer, it's going to be crazy. Okay. I am so interested. Okay, there is a computer monitor, and it's in computer monitor, CRT, computer monitor screen. But I'm so excited. This is so cool. All right, I don't know everything. There's like a whole giant article about it, but I don't know. Magnetic deflections are talked about. I think there's a connection here. I don't know exactly what yet, but I think there's a connection. I don't trust Amane. Now I'm getting into be Okarin. I don't trust Amane. We're going to see where this goes. Okay, anyway. I'm a girl that's obsessed with some old so he's talking about Moeka. She's obsessed. And she's like, oh, yeah. She's like, oh, did you heard? She's like, no, I saw it on the internet. The guy that claimed to be the time traveler, Titor, he's like, oh, yeah, it was on the channel that the IBM 5100 was created before BASIC, which BASIC is a software. So it can read IBM's proprietary programming languages or something. And he's like, Titor, who appeared in 2000, also said that. Okay. And that's when he goes back to get online. So she seems to know a lot about computers and things like that. I feel like she might be integral in the team. She seems like she's going to become a lab member by the end of this because she seems like she knows a lot or should be working with them, knowing what she knows. So then we have, I thought it was interesting in the Japanese sub, the voice that's doing the voice for John Titor, as well as Miyano Mamoru's voice and other voices, they have this like voice recorder, like distortion over the top of it, so you can't quite tell what the voice is. The English dub does not do that. So I don't know if there's a reason for that, but this one does. You have fixed ideas about the nature of time. And so Nameless Prophet San says John Titor took a dump and now the universe is doomed. Okay, Nameless Prophet. And so then we have Chestnut Rice and Kamehameha says this is getting more disappointing. None of this is really concrete. I realize you're doing your best to sound realistic, but you can't fool me. Time isn't a single line moving from the past to the future. And then it says, I don't know who Chestnut Rice and Kamehameha is, but he talks about, let's say we go back in time and kill someone that we call A. We're not killing grandmothers anymore. We're killing someone that's just called A. This alters something called the divergence number. So we have divergence number. Okay. Maybe it's just for Steins Gate. This seems like it's just for Steins Gate. Never mind. We're not going to go into that. As soon as I typed in divergence number and it was like divergence number, Steins Gate. And I was like, nope, we're not going to go into that. Nope. I didn't know if that was a real thing or if this is for the show. Apparently it's for the show. This alters something called the divergence number. And the world line moves to a world without A. So here's the thing. We have this thing called a divergence number. I wonder if him giving them like names like 004, 001 or whatever, if that makes them a divergence number. I don't know. So basically you have the world that has A. If A is taken out and killed, then the world line moves to a world without that person in it. But at the same time, when there's a world line move, people's memories are altered. In other words, memories of the world line where A existed are deleted and replaced with memories of a world line where A doesn't exist. So, I mean, I think that's interesting in a way because they're saying that if you went back in time and killed someone called A, then the world will forget that they even exist, which is interesting. So it's kind of like you would just cease to exist in that world. So if you were in timeline A and you existed throughout it, but then you were killed, somebody went back in the past and killed you, then you would no longer cease to exist in that world and they'd forget about you, which we kind of talked about in theory last time. It's a little bit different than their theory in the last episode from previous forums. And they're like, I'm more interested in how CERN, so we already have Chestnut Rice and Kamehameha. I'm more interested in how CERN, a research organization, ends up as a planetary ruler, a question I've been asking for a while now. So he says, a question I've been asking for a while now. Don't believe what CERN says. And the Nameless Prophet says this results in a dystopia. They've already succeeded in creating a mini black hole. What's a dystopia? Okay. It would be easiest to describe a dystopia as the revival of communism. Well, I don't think it necessarily is a revival of communism, and the world's reversion to 17th century living standards. Oh, so basically what they're saying is like, you could describe a dystopia as, whenever people are like, oh, well, that's going back to like, to talk negatively of communism or say that 17th living standards were the worst. It's basically applying this negative connotation to it as in comparing it to the past. But by 2036, CERN holds most of the world's science and technology. And so, okay. And you need the IBN 5100 to change the future. So anyway, there's a little moment here where the conversation like goes and Nameless Prophet says, guess what I had for dinner tomorrow? What does that have to do with anything? I want to know the future. Okay. So then he says, exactly. That's correct. I need that computer. I need its abilities to stop their plans. John Titor sounds like Okarin, so I don't know. But apparently John Titor needs that computer, which is the same one that Moika is looking for. Right? Interesting. Interesting. So they can go back and stop their plans. And it says Hoen, so Hoen Kioma, the John Titor appeared in 2000, said the same thing. And they're like, dude, just shut up already. So, okay, so Hoen Kioma, he just goes by that name in the forums, not by anything different. So we don't know who Nameless Prophet is. We don't know who Nameless Prophet is, or Chestnut, or Kamehameha. Which I wonder if they're all like Moika and Carise, if they're all of them using their own usernames, or if they're just random people. I don't know. And then this John Titor is like, well, the me who appeared 10 years ago. As I said, I've unfortunately never been to the year 2000. But it's possible you saw me in a different world line. So there we go. Interesting. And he's like, I want to talk to you in detail. So then we have, okay, so John Titor wants to talk with Okarin about this alternate about this alternate world line where he was talking about the year 2000. So then we have in 2015, World War III occurs. In 2036, the Earth is polluted by nuclear warfare. Let's hope that doesn't happen. I've traveled from 2036 to get an IBN 5100. It has a hidden function. Only a few IBN engineers know this. What's fun is that these are actual technologies. So like the collider is real. The computer is real. Do they actually have these functions? Well, no, not the IBN 5100. But it's cool because most of us don't know that. So you can just use that as saying that it is. This is my address. If you contact me, I'll answer. Meanwhile, we have Mayuri getting some snacks for Okarin. And he's like, I almost got it. I just got to get the SQL table list, and figuring out the password should be easy. So Daru's trying to hack it. And then Mayuri brings them some snacks since they've been up for 2 all-nighters. Canned Odin sounds disgusting and very salty, but maybe they're into it. And she's like, I can't treat you all the time, but she's like, I gotta make sure I buy my Rainette sausage. Ridiculous. So while Daru is hacking, they go out onto the rooftop to have their snack. I like the imagery of her under the umbrella and him in the shadows. I thought that was really cool. I liked that. And he's like, what does she say there? She's like, I bet Karisu-chan left because she was mad. And he's like, well, that has nothing to do with the hacking. She went off on her own. I like him looking up at the sky with it sunny and her looking down the ground in the shadow. That part's really cool. And then they keep trading little parts for that. I want to see where he stole the piece from her soup. Because she's like, oh, I guess I'll trade you for this one piece. And he's like, negotiations are concluded. And she goes for the beef strip, but he's already taken it. Huh. When did he take it? Curious. He's like, it was good. And she kind of finds that like endearing and kind of blushes at that. But I'm like, when did he take it? So Daru ends up hacking. And he's like, I managed to do it. There are limits to what I can see without being an admin. And he's like, it's like I can only see the boobs. And she's like, what a pervert. 'Twas a different time, 2010. But anyway, so they start looking at and seeing these emails. And so I wanted to go back because something changed, right? So I don't know who Dr. Excite is, but they talked about getting him to translate the English maybe. And so then he's like, so basically they translate it. Okay. What changed about it? Because it changed from one thing to the next. He said, okay, so Paul Newman, February 9th of 2010. And right now it's July. Okay, it says, hi, Paul. He's like, we don't need you to act it out. I love their voice acting in this scene. It's really, really good. The HLC is working well, but then they say it's working surprisingly well. There's no mention of a time machine, but there's this Z program that they put in there. So something about a Z program. Anything with the Z in it sounds futuristic and scary. And then they say experiment report 137. Now, those numbers add up to equal 11. I don't know if the numerology means anything by it. And then they say from there, the mini black hole mission has already been established. And I'll skip that report. So they've established something with mini black holes, even though it was declared a failure. And then it says human is dead, mismatch. So yeah, so it says experiment, human is dead. And then it says some man's report, number 14, proposes. I want to see, is there anything else that we got before then? Is there anything else we got before then? What else does it say? Experiment result. Okay. I want to try to get it right. Yeah. Okay, good. Yes, here we go. So, generation mission has the report is omitted. Name of an experiment error. Human is dead. Mismatch. Jellyman's report number 14. Attach the paper. Experiment proposes that something to stop as long as lifter's adjustment and part place agreement point. Okay, so something about Jellyman. Now we got Jellyman included. We don't know who Jellyman is, but there's there's a human that's dead. Okay. I'm so intrigued. Yes, the mismatch. Okay, I want to go back and see if there's any more with that. Ah, damn it. Nope, it's the same screenshot. And of course, in this, Okarin freaks out because a human has died. Now, the last time we saw a dead human was Kurisei, and she had died where the satellite dropped down. Is this the same? Is it a different timeline? Are they experimenting and Okarin stumbled across it? What do we do with that? Okarin is very disturbed easily by the fact that dead people are involved, and I get it. Maybe I'm desensitized from all the anime I've watched where people have died, but he really has a huge reaction to that, like more so than the other characters. So that's interesting. So as far as the ED goes, the hourglass breaking is interesting. The fact that when it all comes together, it forms the figure of Kurisei. So is she the experiment? Is she the linchpin in all of this? Is her death and then coming back to life what started this whole thing? What does that mean? I don't know exactly. I will say, real quick, since we're at the end of the episode, one thing I did look up, because in the OP there are morning glories, and so I always think morning glories are like, new morning, everything. There's American symbolism, but I wanted to look up some Japanese symbolism. So I found this site from the Sainsbury Institute where they talked about morning glories and the Edo period in Japan. It says the English are world famous for their love of gardening. Less obvious is the horticultural enthusiasm of the Edo period Japanese, who were just as keen gardeners as the English. In fact, Japanese Edo period is where our eras often twinned with certain flowers and plants that become particularly fashionable during this period. For instance, camellias are associated with the Kanai era, while azaleas marked the Genroku era. Other examples include chrysanthemums of Saitoku, Acer trees of Kyoho, Ardisia crispa of Kansai, and the morning glory of Bunka Bunsei, Japanese rhodea of pink of Tempo, and Henka or mutant morning glories of the Kei Ansai eras. Such associations reflect the gardening fever experienced in many parts of Japan centered on Kyoto, Osaka, and Edo during the 17th to 19th centuries. And it is thanks to books and other printed documents from the periods that help us understand the extent of this vernacular enthusiasm. So, among the surviving number of books on popular flowers, those concerning morning glories are particularly copious. Particularly noticeable are those depicting Henka or mutant morning glories. Morning glories were originally introduced to Japan as a medicinal plant, a laxative to be precise, some 1,200 years ago. Their effective yet ephemeral blossoms, however, made the annual plant a popular ornamental container foliage. Their rise to stardom comes in the late Edo period when morning glories suddenly experienced a mutation. The new, generally non-seed-bearing mutant strands produced a range of spectacular and some most peculiar flowers, and indeed even curious vines and leaves. To capture the cacophony of strange mutant morning glories, records were made in copious amounts compared to other botanical records by enthusiasts, with many containing illustrations. Morning glories were so popular, they became a cultural sensation. The mania came in two boom waves, in the Bunka Bonsai period and the Kai Ansai period. In addition to a number of illustrated books published, the morning glory boom manifested in the form of hana awase, or flower competitions, that took place at local temples and other communal and private spaces where growers exhibited their mutant hinkai, morning glories. The displayed plants were ranked and listed and printed as a single sheet following the tradition of sumo wrestling Bonzuke ranking lists. An example of the morning glory ranking Bonzuke print can be seen from the National Museum of Japan's history website. So there's all these different morning glories. They all look different, but a lot of the mutant ones look like the morning glories that are in the OP for Steins Gate. And if we're talking about gel nanas and things being altered and timelines possibly getting mutated and created into alternate world lines, this whole discussion about morning glories suddenly has a lot more symbolism. So now you've learned more about morning glories in Japan, but I definitely recommend going to the Sainsbury Institute. There's a whole section about it. Super cool. But yeah, I've talked for an hour about this episode. Not quite as much as last week, but still. So yeah, I'm trying to wrap my brain around this series. I feel like I got a little bit more out of this episode, but I'm still like, oh my God. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction discussion. I'm excited to hear your comments down below. But anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I will be back very soon, y'all, with episode 4 of Steins Gate. Bye.